You've heard of Islamic modernists arguing for gender equality and democratic governance. You've seen traditional scholars warning that any change dilutes divine revelation. So, which path secures Islam's relevance in the 21st century? Deep reform or steadfast conservatism? I'm Fakir Al-Kamosh. In this 8-part series, we'll chart the rise of modernist thinkers, map traditionalist responses, and ask, can innovation serve faith, or must tradition stand unyielding to the tides of time? Intellectual precursors. Jamal al-Din al-Afghani died 1897, called for unity against colonial powers, urged reinterpretation of Sharia to empower Muslim societies. Muhammad Abduh died 1905, advocate of ijtihad, independent reasoning, sought to harmonize Quranic principles with modern science and rational thought. Key tenets of modernism. Contextual reinterpretation. Verses must consider historical circumstances, asbab al-nuzul, allowing Sharia to adapt to modern realities. Human rights and equality. Universal dignity under God implies gender justice, religious freedom, and minority protections. Democratic values, consultation, shura, can evolve into representative governance, merging Islamic ethics with civic participation. Early institutions, Al-Azhar reforms. Under Muhammad Abduh, Al-Azhar University introduced modern sciences, revamped curriculum, and sent delegations to Europe. Journalism and print. Journals like Al-Ustad and Al-Manar disseminated reformist ideas, igniting debate across the Ottoman Empire and British India. As modernists pushed for contextual reinterpretation, a chorus of traditionalist voices warned that reopening the gates of independent reasoning, ijtihad, threatened the very foundations of Islam. Key players in this backlash included the Ulema's League. In the early 20th century, senior scholars across Al-Azhar, Qom, and Deoband formed informal alliances to preserve classical jurisprudence. They issued public statements condemning any attempts to reinterpret core rulings, especially those governing family law and ritual purity. Argument: the gate of ijtihad closed after the third generation of Muslims, the Salaf, making later innovations, bid'ah, inherently suspect. Preserving consensus, ijma, was paramount to maintaining unity. Ahl al-Hadith movement. Emerging in British India and later in Arabia, the Ahl al-Hadith insisted on strict adherence to the apparent text of the Quran and Sunnah. Unlike other schools that allowed qiyas, analogy, and istislah, public interest, they rejected any reasoning not directly grounded in prophetic narration. Impact. Their influence underpinned the later Wahhabi insistence on purging unauthorized practices and bolstered conservative curricula in state-funded madrasas. Fatwas against reform. Senior muftis issued fatwas branding modernist proposals for women's voting rights, constitutional government, or reinterpretation of penal codes as deviations endangering communal orthodoxy. Example: a 1935 edict from Al-Azhar declared any call to legal equality between men and women as an innovation that leads straight to apostasy. Institutional measures. Curricular resistance. Reformers' textbooks were expunged. Al-Azhar retained medieval manuals while resisting science and philosophy courses. Similar retrenchments occurred in seminaries across South Asia. Harassment of reformers. Figures like Muhammad Rashid Rida faced publication bans, and some were exiled or threatened, demonstrating the lengths to which traditional authorities protected the status quo. At the heart of modernist traditionalist contention lies a question: is ijtihad a perpetual necessity or a closed chapter in Islamic history? Closed gate theory. Proponents: Scholars such as Jamal al-Din al-Mazandaran argued that after the formative era, all major legal questions had been settled by the great jurists. Further ijtihad risked fragmenting Sharia into personal opinions. Implication: legal innovation became taboo. Communities anchored themselves to one of the madhahib, Hanafa, Malik, Shafi'i, Hanbal, ensuring uniformity of practice. Reopening ijtihad, modernist vision. Muhammad Abduh and his disciples held that ijtihad must resume to address unprecedented issues: constitutional law, global finance, biomedical ethics, by applying the Sharia's objectives, maqasid, methodological safeguards. They proposed strict criteria. Only scholars deeply versed in usul al-fiqh and fluent in the spirit as well as the letter of texts should attempt reinterpretation, balancing reverence for tradition with urgency of renewal. Immutable versus contextual rulings, temporal provisions. Jurists distinguished between ibadat, ritual acts, largely immutable, and mu'amalat, social transactions, which could be adapted through maslahah, public interest, reasoning. This allowed modernist scholars to legislate in areas like banking, environmental law, and human rights without challenging core tenets of belief. Institutionalizing ijtihad reformist councils, proposals for national councils of mujtahidin, qualified jurists, akin to the Ottoman Majma al-Shura, surfaced in Egypt and Pakistan, aiming to legitimize collective ijtihad and preempt unauthorized interpretations. Contemporary examples: Iran's 1990s constitutional amendments empowered the Assembly of Experts, senior clerics with juristic credentials, to oversee legal modernization within a framework of guardianship. Does reopening ijtihad threaten unity or ensure Islam's survival in a changing world? How can we guard against unqualified reinterpretations while empowering genuine scholarly renewal? What balance between fixed ritual norms and flexible social laws best serves Muslim communities today? After the end of formal colonial rule, Muslim thinkers harnessed Islamic discourse to forge new political identities. Two major currents emerged: secular nationalism rooted in Muslim-majority states and pan-Islamism seeking supranational unity. Secular nationalism. Genesis. In Egypt, Turkey, and Pakistan, independence leaders framed Islam as cultural heritage rather than legal code. Figures like Mustafa Kemal Ataturk championed a Turkish republic devoid of Sharia courts, while Muhammad Ali Jinnah spoke of Islam as a private faith within a secular state. Characteristics: territorial sovereignty. The nation-state became primary loyalty. Religious identity was pluralized under constitutional citizenship. Legal dualism. Civil codes borrowed from European models regulated family law, commerce, and criminal justice, limiting Sharia to personal status tribunals. State control of religion. Ministries of religious affairs appointed imams and standardized Friday sermons, subordinating ulama to bureaucratic oversight. Pan-Islamism ideological roots. Hassan al-Banna and the Muslim Brotherhood in 1928 rejected narrow nationalism, advocating for an Islamic polity transcending borders. Their slogan, "Islam is the solution," captured the vision of a unified Ummah under Shura and Sharia. Transnational networks. Branches sprouted across the Middle East, South Asia, and North Africa, sharing propaganda, literature, and organizational models. Political activism. Brotherhood-inspired parties contested elections, ran social services, and maintained underground cells where open politics was banned. Islamic social order, emphasis on welfare, clinics, schools, zakat distribution as both outreach and a model for future Islamic states. Tensions between currents, secular versus sacred. Nationalists viewed pan-Islamists as subversive, threatening territorial integrity. Pan-Islamists accused secular regimes of betraying divine sovereignty. Cold War dimensions. Western powers funded secular military regimes to contain brotherhood movements. The Soviet bloc courted left-wing Islamist factions for anti-imperialist collaboration. Hybrid responses. Some states co-opted the Brotherhood's social programs while outlawing their political wings, permitting zakat and schooling but banning party activity. In the 21st century, a new wave of Islamic reformers interprets Quranic stewardship, khilafah, as a call to environmental activism, blending tradition with ecological urgency. Green theology foundations. Scriptural basis, verses like, "Do not seek corruption in the land," 2:11, and "He placed you as caretakers over the earth," 6:165, inspire ecological reflection. Thinkers like Irfan A. Omar and Yassin al-Jiburi articulate an Islamic environmental ethic grounded in Tawhid's holistic unity, maqasid of preservation, extending the 5 objectives of Sharia to include protection of earth, water, species, and climate. Avoiding israf, Quranic ban on waste, 731, reinterpreted as opposition to consumerism and pollution. Interconnected Ummah. Global ecological crises demand transnational Muslim cooperation, echoing pan-Islamist networks. Grassroots movements, green iftar campaigns. Organizations in Malaysia and Morocco run zero-waste Ramadan programs, replacing single-use plastics with reusable iftar kits and compostable utensils. Eco-Waqf initiatives. Sufi zawiyas and brotherhood offshoots establish tree-planting endowments, solar-powered mosques, and water harvesting projects, funded through community contributions and blockchain transparency. Youth activism. Muslim youth collectives like Green Ummah organize climate marches in Jakarta and Cairo, framing environmental justice as a form of jihad al-nafs, struggle of the self, and communal responsibility. Institutional engagement, fatwas for ecology. Councils in Indonesia and Pakistan issue rulings permitting eco-taxes and penalizing illegal deforestation as crimes against creation. Interfaith green alliances. Islamic organizations partner with Christian and Buddhist groups on reforestation and clean energy projects, leveraging shared scriptural imperatives for stewardship. Academic programs. Universities in Doha and Kuala Lumpur now offer Islamic environmental studies degrees, training future leaders in faith-based sustainability. Challenges and prospects. Economic hurdles. Reliance on oil revenues in Gulf states complicates transitions to renewables. Eco-fatwas face resistance when threatening lucrative petro-industries. Theological pushback. Conservative ulama question whether environmentalism distracts from traditional jurisprudence, labeling some green practices as bid'ah unless explicitly grounded in classical texts. Hopeful signs. The success of community solar mosques and regenerative agriculture projects demonstrates viable faith-based models that honor tradition while innovating for planetary survival. As debates raged over reform, women's status became a lightning rod. Modernists championed equality, while conservatives warned of social chaos. Let's trace the contours of this pivotal struggle. Early reformist voices Qasim Amin, d. 1908, argued in The Liberation of Women that the veil and seclusion harm society and contradict Islam's spirit of justice. He appealed to ijtihad to reinterpret hijab as modesty of behavior, not mandatory seclusion. Muhammad Abdu's sister, Aisha, spoke at mixed gatherings in Cairo, asserting women's right to education and community leadership, sparking uproar among traditionalists. Key modernist proposals: educational access, separate or co-ed institutions for girls teaching both religious sciences and modern subjects, medicine, law, and engineering. Legal equality, reform of personal status codes to grant women equal rights in marriage, divorce, and inheritance, using maslaha, public interest, arguments to override rigid classical rulings. Political participation, affirming shura as basis for women's suffrage and office holding, citing the Quran's emphasis on capable leadership, regardless of gender. Conservative counters, fatwas against suffrage. Leading muftis in Al-Azhar and Qom issued edicts denying women the vote, citing purported harms to family cohesion and public morality. Retraditionalization of hijab, mandating full niqab and segregation in public spaces, taught as essential for preserving social order and protecting women's honor. Hybrid outcomes: Turkey and Tunisia. Secular constitutions abolished religious courts, women gained equal civil law status, but state-imposed restrictions on religious expression sparked new debates over faith and freedom. Morocco's Mudawana, 2004, a landmark family law code co-drafted by female activists and moderate ulama, expanding women's divorce rights, raising marriage age, and granting custody protections, all justified by maqasid of justice. Even when reform laws passed, grassroots backlash and fatwa wars continued, illustrating limits of top-down change. Digital fatwa wars. Online platforms like askimam.com host thousands of Q&A exchanges where conservative muftis reassert classical rulings on women's testimony, inheritance, and public presence, countering reformist jurists in real time. Women-led movements, Musawa, Malaysia. A pan-Muslim gender justice network publishes scholarly critiques of discriminatory laws and lobbies parliaments, framing equality as faithful to Quranic ethics. Jordan's Sisters Forum organizes public lectures and legal clinics, empowering women to challenge unfair rulings in religious courts using both national law and Islamic principles. Societal backlashes. In parts of South Asia and the Gulf, conservative clerics mobilize street protests against co-education and women judges, framing reform as Western cultural invasion. Internet campaigns, #SaveOurHijab, pressure universities to enforce stricter dress codes, demonstrating how digital activism can also reinforce conservative norms. As modern reform matured, new voices, post-colonial scholars, Islamic feminists, and queer-affirming thinkers challenged both old binaries and elite gatekeepers, proposing pluralistic reinterpretations of scripture and law. Islamic feminism. Key figures: Fatemeh Mernissi, Amina Wadud, and Kechia Ali employ historical critical methods to argue for gender justice deeply embedded in Quranic principles. Wadud's Quran and Woman reframes key verses on testimony and leadership to affirm women's full spiritual and legal equality. Methodology: contextual hermeneutics, situating 7th-century norms within their milieu, distinguishing between universal ethical commands and time-bound social regulations. Maqasid analysis, prioritizing Sharia's objectives, justice, dignity, public good, to support reforms in family law, inheritance, and guardianship statutes. Impact: women-led ijtihad councils in Tunisia and Morocco have issued progressive fatwas endorsing women judges, female-led prayer groups, and equal divorce rights. Postmodern critiques, deconstruction of master narratives, Scholars like Shireen Saikali and Fareed Isak interrogate colonial and patriarchal readings of Islam, exposing how power shaped classical jurisprudence. They promote plural epistemologies, acknowledging multiple valid voices within the Ummah. Ethics of inclusion, emphasizing Wahdat al-Mawani, unity in diversity. Postmodern reformers advocate for full inclusion of LGBTQ+ Muslims and religious minorities, framing difference as divine creativity rather than deviance. Queer inclusive movements, Mawjudin in Tunisia and Muslims for Progressive Values in the U.S., reinterpret Hadith and Quranic metaphors to affirm same-sex love under an expansive ethic of mercy, Rahmah. They issue communal guidance on ritual and family formation for queer Muslims, creating safe spiritual spaces. Challenges and backlash. Progressive fatwas meet fierce opposition. Conservative councils denounce them as Western imports, threatening social cohesion. Online harassment and fatwa threats force many reformers into digital anonymity or exile. The Internet has democratized religious discourse. Social media influencers, podcast hosts, and messaging app imams shape belief and practice outside traditional madrasa walls. Women-led podcasts and channels, the Muslima. Nextdoor and Ilm Feed's Sisters Circle produce weekly discussions on theology, mental health, and social justice, modeling inclusive scholarship accessible to global audiences. Micro lectures, 3-minute explainer videos on Quranic verses and Hadith nuances bypass gatekeeping, empowering laypeople to engage in tafsir and fiqh debates. Hijab and identity styles, hashtag hijab is my freedom, and hashtag scarves for change campaigns, showcase diverse hijab aesthetics, from sports hijabs to eco-fabric wraps, linking personal expression to religious devotion and environmental ethics. Virtual styling workshops hosted on Instagram Live teach modest fashion that honors faith while embracing contemporary design, reshaping public perceptions of Muslim women. Messaging app, imams and virtual councils, WhatsApp, fatwa groups. Verified scholars offer 24/7 guidance on marriage, finance, and ethics using voice notes and text-based shura. Community voting on answers builds trust and transparency. Telegram, Majma al-Ijtihad. International networks of qualified jurists hold real-time debates on emerging issues, AI ethics, gene editing, climate treaties, publishing consensus statements for global distribution. Algorithmic challenges, platform algorithms often prioritize sensationalist content, polemical takfir debates, or mystical clickbait over nuanced scholarship. Reformers respond with SEO optimization, hashtag strategies, number FIQH of tomorrow, and sponsored content to surface balanced voices. As reformers and traditionalists vie for the future of Islamic education, innovative institutions blend classical sciences with modern disciplines, creating hybrid seminaries and accredited online programs. Integrated curricula, dual-track programs. Institutes like the International Islamic University Malaysia, IIUM, offer BA/MA degrees combining Usul al-Fiqh, Tajwid, and Maqasid study, alongside social sciences, law, and environmental studies, fostering graduates fluent in both tradition and contemporary contexts. Modular learning. Programs structure courses into core Roots of Revelation modules and elective Branches of Modernity, allowing students to specialize in fields such as gender justice, bioethics, or interfaith dialogue. Online masters and certificate courses, virtual madaris, Platforms like Al-Maghrib Institute and Bayina Online deliver live-streamed tafsir and hadith classes, offering certificates endorsed by recognized scholars. Students participate in virtual halakas, submit research papers, and receive ijazah via secure digital accreditation. Micro-credentials. Emerging providers issue stackable micro-credentials, e.g., Certificate in Islamic Finance, Diploma in Comparative Jurisprudence, enabling lifelong learning without committing to full degrees. Blended mentorship models, local study circles plus global faculty. Students attend weekly in-person circles with community imams, while senior scholars from Cairo, London, or Chicago deliver monthly intensive seminars via video conference, ensuring personal guidance alongside global perspectives. Peer learning networks. Cohorts use messaging apps to form study pods, co-author tafsir glossaries, and peer-review each other's exegetical essays, modeling collaborative scholarship across continents. Accreditation and quality assurance. Interinstitutional consortia. Groups like the Council of Islamic Academies set shared standards for curriculum, faculty qualifications, and assessment methods, granting joint accreditation seals recognized by national education ministries. Sharia and secular oversight. Programs undergo dual reviews by jurists for doctrinal soundness and by universities for academic rigor, ensuring graduates meet both spiritual and professional benchmarks. New pedagogical innovations address diverse learner needs and cultivate a generation equipped for both mosque and modernity. Case-based learning, fiqh. Simulations. Virtual reality scenarios immerse students in realistic settings, resolving inheritance disputes, drafting charitable endowment bylaws, or negotiating mosque zoning permissions, applying jurisprudence to practical challenges. Ethics workshops. Role-playing exercises explore moral dilemmas, AI in medicine, climate justice, digital privacy, framed by Maqasid principles and guided by expert panels. Interdisciplinary cohorts, cross-faculty teams, programs group theology students with peers in engineering, law, and public health, tasked with co-developing community projects, e.g., solar-powered Quranic schools, promoting mutual understanding and holistic problem-solving. Mentor-mentee pairings. Each student is paired with both a traditional scholar and a secular academic advisor, ensuring balanced feedback on theological depth and research methodologies. Digital natives and community leaders. Youth ambassadors, graduates become digital imams, hosting podcasts, moderating online fatwa forums, and advising NGOs, bridging generational gaps and countering extremist narratives. Social entrepreneurs, alumni launch Islamic social enterprises, ethical fintech startups, halal agribusiness cooperatives, and interfaith peace NGOs, applying their hybrid training to real-world impact. Challenges and quality risks. Digital divide. Access remains uneven. Rural and low-income students struggle with connectivity and language barriers. Credential inflation. Proliferation of low-quality certificates risks diluting the value of true ijazah and accredited degrees, underscoring the need for robust oversight. Governments and global bodies now shape the contours of reformist and traditionalist education alike through funding, accreditation, and regulatory frameworks. Their involvement brings both opportunities and tensions. National Education Ministries' curriculum mandates. In Malaysia and Egypt, ministries require private and public Islamic schools to teach a unified syllabus blending classical texts with civics, science, and foreign languages, aiming to produce well-rounded graduates. Teacher certification. States set minimum qualifications for religious instructors, requiring degrees in both theology and pedagogy, curbing unlicensed pop-up madrasa networks that lack oversight. International organizations, Islamic Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, ISESCO, coordinates cross-border scholarship programs, hosts biennial forums on education for sustainable Ummah, and publishes best practice guides for integrating STEM and Sharia studies. United Nations and NGOs. Through UNESCO and UNICEF partnerships, faith-based institutions receive grants for girl-child education, digital literacy labs, and teacher training in conflict zones, bridging humanitarian aid with religious schooling. Foreign aid and soft power, Gulf states endowments, Saudi Arabia's King Salman Centers, and Qatar's Education Above All fund hundreds of scholarships for students from Africa and Southeast Asia tied to study in state-aligned Islamic universities, shaping ideological leanings. Conditional grants. Aid often requires compliance with donor-approved curricula and prohibits teaching content deemed extremist. Recipient institutions must submit annual reports and undergo periodic audits. Regulation versus autonomy. Quality assurance agencies, bodies like Malaysia's Malaysian Qualifications Agency, MQA, and Turkey's Council of Higher Education, YOK, accredit Islamic faculties, enforcing research output metrics and faculty publication standards. Academic freedom concerns. Scholars in some countries face censorship. Topics like gender reform or pluralism may trigger funding cuts or deregistration of entire programs, stifling critical inquiry. Prospects for a global Ummah university. Vision. Proponents propose a transnational Ummah university network, sharing credits, joint degrees, and virtual campuses under a standardized framework of classical and modern disciplines. Challenges: harmonizing diverse legal systems, language barriers, and balancing local autonomy with global standards, safeguarding academic freedom against politicization. Can state oversight ensure quality without undermining religious authenticity and critical thought? How do international aid models avoid ideological conditionality while promoting inclusive curricula? What governance structure could sustain a truly global Islamic university that respects both unity and diversity? As we conclude our exploration of modern reform movements, it's time to articulate a forward-looking model that unites tradition, innovation, and global collaboration. Core pillars of the future: model holistic curriculum, embed classical Quran, Hadith, and fiqh, alongside critical thinking, digital literacy, environmental ethics, and human rights, ensuring graduates are faithful scholars and engaged citizens. Plural accreditation. Establish a consortium of traditional seminaries, modern universities, and civil society bodies to co-certify programs, honoring doctrinal soundness and academic rigor. Digital-physical hybridity, virtual campuses, offer global cohorts, interactive VR lecture halls, and collaborative research labs, complemented by localized study circles for embodied practice and community service. Open access repositories. Maintain streaming libraries of classical texts with multilingual commentaries, research portals, and crowdsourced glossaries, fostering inclusivity and shared ownership. Ethics of innovation. Conscience codes. Draft digital charters that govern algorithmic recommendations, data privacy and learning platforms, and ethical use of AI, guided by Maqasid al-Shara and universal human dignity. Community governance. Rotate leadership through intergenerational councils, students, educators, scholars, and lay stakeholders to ensure responsiveness, accountability, and protection of academic freedom. Empowerment pathways, scholar-practitioner. Tracks. Design dual career paths combining scholarship with social entrepreneurship, public policy, or interfaith peacemaking, equipping alumni to lead in diverse sectors. Seed grants and fellowships. Allocate micro-grants for research, community projects, and tech innovations proposed by students. Nurturing grassroots solutions to local challenges. For individuals, enroll in hybrid programs, support open access initiatives, mentor emerging learners, and advocate for inclusive curricula in your communities. For institutions, partner across sectors, religious schools, universities, NGOs, and governments to share resources, co-develop courses, and uphold ethical standards. For policymakers, craft policies that protect academic freedom, fund cross-border scholarships, and incentivize faith-based service projects that address social and environmental needs. Let us weave the timeless threads of our heritage with the bright strands of innovation, so that Islam's light may guide both heart and world. Fakir al-Khamosh.